record button. All right, so welcome everybody. Again, I'm Damian Adams. I'm IFAS Associate Dean for Research. I'm very pleased to be here today to talk about faculty entrepreneurship, talk about the ecosystem for entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship support at UF, and success stories from a couple of our faculty, followed by an hour-long webinar and Q&A with the USDA SBIR team. So very pleased to welcome them. And so if we could just have some quick, brief introductions. Let me first have Dr. Sheija George introduce herself.
Thanks, Damian. Yeah, my name is Sheija George, and I'm a research coordinator here with the split appointment with the North Florida REC up in Quincy and with the IFAS Dean's Research Dean's Office.
Thank you so much, Sheija. And kudos to Sheija for having the forethought to reach out to the SBIR team and to suggest that we have this webinar. I think it's a great opportunity for us and for our faculty. Next, Anita, would you want to briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, so my name is Anita Rao, and I'm Program Director at UF Innovate Pathways, which is one of the units of UF Innovate. And I will tell you more about what we do, after the introductions.
Great, thank you so much, Anita. Matthias, Dr. Matthias Kirst, would you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Damian. So I'm a faculty at the School of Forest Fisheries and Geomag Sciences. I was involved in one of the startups here at UF. So I'll tell a bit about that story in a few minutes.
Great, thanks, Matthias. Next, let me go to Yanis Amadzidis. Dr. Amadzidis, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Yanis Amadzidis. I'm Associate Professor at the Department of Agriculture and Biological Engineering, and I'm located in Southwest Florida Research and Education Center.
Okay, thanks, Yanis. And the SBIR team, would you please introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'm Melinda Kaufman. I'm the SBIR STTR Program Coordinator for USDA. And we have two more SBIR staff here. I'll let them introduce themselves. Tammy?
Hi. Sure.
Hi, I'm Tammy Neville, and I am a program specialist in the SBIR STTR program for USDA.
Yarun?
I'm Nurul Nahar. I'm a program specialist. I'm working in the USDA SBIR STTR program. Always good collaboration with Melinda and Tammy as a team.
All right, great. Fantastic. Well, thanks everybody, and thanks everybody for joining us today. So first up on the agenda is Anita Rao. Anita's going to talk to us a little bit about the UF ecosystem for supporting faculty entrepreneurship. Anita?
I'm going to share the screen. Can you see the slides? Okay, great. Well, thanks, Damian, for the opportunity to speak today. And what I wanted to talk to you is about what we do as UF Innovate, what our role is and how we do it, and what kind of support programs we have for innovators across the university. We work with all of the colleges in the university, and we are essentially the commercialization arm of UF. So some of you may have worked with us before, and some of you may not have, but I thought I'd start with a few examples of innovations that have come out of UF, just to give you a flavor of the kinds of things that we do. Really, one of them, I just highlight one of them here, is the Centricon termite control system, which actually came out of IFAS. So that's one of IFAS technologies that's been on the market for a long time, and many of you may be aware of it. The one in the middle on the first row, Luxturna gene therapy, is the first gene therapy drug that was approved by the FDA in the US. And that we had there was some UF technology that went into that as well. So there are a number of different kinds of things that we work with and that come out of all the different colleges. And this slide sort of gives you an idea as to, the breadth of the technologies. So our office, we have about 45 people and doing all kinds of, playing all kinds of different roles. We have 4 units at UF Innovate: Tech Licensing, which does the traditional taking in the disclosures, talking to people, and protecting the innovation, and really making deals with partners, with companies, and also spinning out startup companies. But in addition to that, there are a number of 3 other units. Pathways is our newest unit, which is what I lead. That's our program to put in place more training and support programs so that we can accelerate commercialization, manages the incubators. There are multiple incubators here. So they manage the incubators and support the incubator companies. And Ventures is our program that really has $2 million venture fund and EIRs across the state that really support the startup program. And we can talk about that some more as we go along. These are, I'm going to go through this very quickly, but the program has been there for a long time. UF Innovate and Tech Licensing has been there since 1985. And we've spun out about 300 companies, and we've routinely been quoted in different places, but suffice it to say that, we are continuously evolving, but we have, it's an established office, and it's a high volume office, and we get about 350 new invention disclosures each year from the university. So, and we spin out about 10 to 15 companies each year. That has sort of, changed a little bit through the COVID pandemic, but it's quite, and we're looking to increase that. And one of our ways to increase that is to actually provide more support. And this is a great opportunity to really get the word out. And we, really appreciate, we've been doing a lot of SBIR, STTR work as well. And we hope to continue to do that and expand on that. For those who haven't really dealt with our office before, this is an autumn slide, which really sort of explains, the process. And people do research and they file invention disclosures. We evaluate, protect the invention, market, and then license. And a lot of this product development, public use, economic growth, all of that, happens sort of outside, but really we're involved in that as well. It's it's part of our mission. We really work with a lot of entities around the state, and our incubators also are very much engaged. So it's a continuous process, and we really engage in all parts of this life cycle. So for those of you who have an invention, just wanted to mention, what you could do. Call us anytime. Feel free, even if you haven't filed an invention disclosure with us, just pick up the phone, call us. We're happy to talk to people about their innovations and sort of guide them. On this slide, we have a portal you can log into and submit your disclosure online, and here's the phone number, and we're happy to talk to you about your work. We protect intellectual property in a number of different ways, and either it's by filing patents, copyrights, and trademarks, etc., but also in contractual methods, depending on what is needed. We have the whole gamut of services that we provide to protect the innovation. So important thing is to sort of do it ahead of time before you publish, so that it can be, IP rights can be protected. One of the things that, many innovators, they file a disclosure and we patent, but a lot needs to happen before something can be commercialized. And the commercialization reality is that you have to really see what the market is. We support that kind of effort and connect people so that you can, if you need a collaborator, we can connect you across campus. We have mentors and advisors here. The incubator has mentors, and also the ventures program. We have EIRs across the state. So we have been doing a lot of this in between, support services, so that we can help people understand what may be needed to move your technology forward, and also connect you with resources. Pathways, like I mentioned earlier, it's our newest unit, but we've been doing a lot of outreach. We have a newsletter where we share opportunities. You can sign up for that. Visit our website. We have SBIR, STTR programs, guidance that we provide, and also we actually support grant writing as well, and other types of trainings, that entrepreneurial training that would be helpful as you move along. So feel free to visit the website, reach out to us. We encourage you to, if you have a question, feel free to email us or reach out to us. I talked a little bit about Ventures program. Jackson Streeter is our Ventures director, and he has $2 million in venture funds, which really he invests in startups that have licensed UF technology, but also, they have to have other, we don't lead investments, we invest when we have other investors at the table. So the monies that we put in for any deep technology venture is much smaller to what may be needed. So, but we do collaborate with other investors and put money in. We're also part of the Osage University Network, OUP venture fund program. So they actually, just this week, we had a presentation from one of their venture investors telling us, the kinds of things that they've been looking at. So we're connected to a lot of venture funds, and we work together with them. UF Innovate Accelerate runs the incubators. The gray building that you see is where our office is. There are some 60 odd companies in this building actually. And on the right side, the rounded structure is the Sid Martin Biotech Incubator, and they're in Progress Park, and they have, both the incubators have a lot of events, networking events. The Biotech Incubator actually also has USDA equipment grants, so they have, building their, they have a lot of shared equipment for life science research. And so many of our life science companies are in that incubator, in the biotech incubator, and they've actually won a number of awards over the years. And the whole area where it is in a rural area, and that whole area has expanded, and you have a lot of companies that graduate from these incubators, and they have spread out and grown. So the entrepreneurial ecosystem here has grown tremendously. So this is the support that we provide, training. We have mentors, IP licensing, of course, a traditional tech transfer, incubators, networking opportunities, investor connections. We have 4 EIRs across the states and across Florida, in Tampa, South Florida, Jacksonville, and Orlando. And they are connected to management talent, in different parts of Florida. Gainesville is a small town, but we are connected to other, major centers. So we can really take advantage of the opportunities that are available there. And one of the other things that we have been doing a lot of, and Damien and Matthias are aware of this, we're also working with other universities across the state, and to put in place I-Core type programs so that we can actually support entrepreneurship training here. I went through the slides really quickly, considering the time that we have. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I can make the connections, depending on what the question is, and look forward to hearing the rest of the group here. This sounds like an exciting presentation and an exciting event. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Anita. Yeah, you're the model presenter. You left us exactly 4 or 5 minutes for Q&A. That's perfect. If you wouldn't mind sort of relinquishing the screen share, that'd be great.
Sure.
We've got a few minutes for Q&A before Dr. Kirst gives his talk, but Anita, you mentioned a couple of things. I just wanted to clarify. So one was EIRs. Can you tell us a little bit about that program and what their role is?
Entrepreneurs in Residence, we have 4 EIRs, and what their role is they do multiple things. One of the things they do is they connect, if we are in need of, management type to lead a company, we sort of ask if, for instance, if they know people, whether they're here or other places. Many of our startups are here in Florida, but not all. We have many startups in Boston, other places, in other parts of the country. We have typically, let people take the technology, no matter where they are, if they are able and they're, capable of taking the technology forward and, commercializing it, that's fine. So we actually connect with the EIRs and they, if we need management talent, also many of them have all of them actually have industry experience. So they act as mentors for our innovators. So they sit down and talk to our innovators, provide guidance, makes if they need collaborators or there are certain connections, or provide input to take the technology forward. Whether it is still within the university or, if we, for instance, want to spin out the company, then, resources that may be useful for them to make that switch.
Thanks, Anita. One other thing that you mentioned that came up was the ditch of death. Can you explain what that is? And maybe this sort of helps tee up a little bit about the SBIR program, but why would we be concerned about the ditch of death for new enterprises? Yes,
so we have about a $7 million budget for patenting. So every year we spend $7 million patenting new innovations, and just every innovation that's patented doesn't actually get commercialized right away, right? Some get, we're lucky within the first year or so it gets commercialized. And our goal is to commercialize it as quickly as possible so we can recover some monies, also move the technology forward. But there's a gap between fundamental research and, getting the technology ready, and so that somebody, a larger company or a VC investor or someone can actually take it. We have to demonstrate that ours is better than others, do some applied research, make a prototype, generate data that may be useful. And so that's really hard to get money many times. And so that's the spot where we actually have been trying to, and I know many of the federal agencies also are really supporting that translational effort. And so SBIRs really have been really useful in order to really do some of the feasibility and commercialization. So that's
yeah, thank you, Anita. So one other term that came up was ICOR. That's the National Science Foundation's Innovation Core. And I know that we've had faculty go through this. Matthias Kirst, who's going to speak in just a few seconds, went through it. And for all of the faculty that go through our CEDIT program, we're going to offer a sort of an abbreviated version of that NSF ICOR training that I believe UF Innovate will assist with. And we're working on identifying some dates that might work for that. And so please stay tuned. We'll get more information out pretty soon. Anita, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I did get a couple of text questions about reaching out to UF Innovate. I think Anita would be a great point of contact there. So you've got her contact information, and we'll share that again later on, along with the link to the recording. So Anita, hopefully you'll be hearing from a couple of our faculty.
Absolutely. Thanks very much.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Matthias Kirst, you're up next.
All right, Damien, share my slides here. can hear me well, right? All right. So thanks, Damien, for the invitation. For those that have been to the Seeded Summit a few months ago, I think you're going to see some similarities with some of the slides I'll present here, but I try to add some new angles to some of the things that we have learned the last few months and so on. So I'm a faculty in the School of Forest, Fisheries, and Geomatic Sciences. I was also the co-founder of a company called Rapid Genomics. I worked as the CEO of that company in the first few years, and then later on as the chairman of the board and scientific consultant. So what I thought for today that could be useful is to give you an overview of the history of the company, challenges that we had, opportunities that we had, because I think a lot of the lessons that we learned, probably there are good parallels with what other people that want to start their own company may encounter. So Rapid was founded in 2011. We had our first investment, first customers in 2013. And finally, the whole cycle closed in 2022 when the company was acquired by the LGC Group. That's a life science company from the UK. And, I could spend a lot of time sort of talking about the great things that happened over these last 10 years. We had a large number of clients. I think we went from 2 employees. I think now we're probably more around 45. We've genotyped thousands of species. We have one of the things that we really wanted to do through this company was to enable small companies, mid-sized companies, but as also research labs to use genomic information. And also throughout this time, we went through a number of opportunities where we had major pivots, where we suddenly had the ability to now start touching on areas of to commercialize genomic sciences that we had not thought at the beginning. And finally, I think at the end was a good return on investment for an investor, for the founders, and for UF. And again, I think the acquisition in a way happened probably in one of the best possible times for a company to grow and be valued, because I think you all know how this has changed in the last year or so, right? Now, that is the nice part of the story. This is the hard part of the story. Rapid went through these 10 years with a number of highlights, positive things, but at the same time, we also faced a large number of challenges throughout that time. And I think some of these challenges may be challenges that others may encounter in this process. What I thought could be interesting would be to go through some of these challenges and talk a little bit about the ways that we have been able to address, or at least try to address them the best that we could. So first of all, every company, when you start, you need some level of investment, you need some management team. And this was something that was a major limitation to us. When we started, really, there was not a very strong environment around to support and to fund this kind of company. So we had really very limited initial investment. Thankfully, we had an angel investor that stepped in after 1 or 2 years, and that really has allowed the company to take off. But I want to highlight here, the obvious possibility here in terms of investment, in terms of help to be able to support a new company is, of course, SBIR and STTR, which we're talking about today. And, I cannot highlight more the value of this in the sense that they don't take any equity, right? So you're not losing anything of the company. I mean, it's really free money to be able to grow, to be able to create technology. So in a sense, it's really the best case scenario that you'd want in terms of building your company. Of course, there's a little bit more exposure now, I think, to venture capital around the university in North Central Florida. But again, in our case, what really allowed us to take off was an angel investor. And of course, there are other sources like the founders themselves, family, friends, and fools. You can take loans, do some bootstrapping, and try to get some crowdfunding. There are challenges to a lot of these different strategies, but what I'd like to emphasize is something that Anita pointed out before, is that if you are going to that SBIR, STTR route, what we learned very quickly is that this is a kind of proposal that's extremely different from the type of proposal that we had been able to apply, that we had applied to NSF or a traditional USDA foundational grant. And really UF Innovate was very, very helpful in terms of allowing us to build proposals that were competitive, that they really were geared towards this kind of program. So again, I think this is really a great program. And finally, Anita also mentioned UF Innovate Ventures. Again, I had to correct the number here. I had 1 million. So I believe we had 2 million now. This is great. Let's hope we can get to 3, 4, and 5 as we have more and more stories of success here from UF. Now, in terms of management team, when we started, really there was a very small community of possible CEOs, CFOs that could help manage an early start company. I think that has changed to some extent in the last 10 years. There have been a number of new companies that have been created. So we now have, I think, a much stronger critical mass in the area that can help with this kind of enterprise. So obviously that is really extremely helpful. And one thing that I want to highlight is that sometimes the best possible managers are actually sitting right next to you. Rapid Genomics was created together with two individuals that at the time they were my grad students. Marcio Rezende, who I think some people know, he's now a faculty in Hort Science, and Leandro Neves. He was a CEO at the time of the acquisition, and they were really extremely talented individuals, especially for that kind of function. They were able to take the company at times that were perhaps difficult to really its path of success. So again, don't ignore the fact that perhaps just around you, you may have some of these really very talented individuals. It is interesting to note that I've heard this now from a number of people that are involved in venture capital, that they don't fund faculty. They prefer to fund teams that are led by grad students or postdocs, because a lot of times they have more time, they have more energy to really make these things happen. I think we heard the same thing yesterday from Ajay from OUP. He mentioned, that they looked very favorably at teams that are at least in part composed by grad students or postdocs. And again, this was a reason for success here. And I just want to remind you, it might be kind of obvious, but a lot of times we have a great idea, great invention that we want to commercialize, but if you don't have a good management team, it just doesn't matter how good it is, it's just not going to take off. A lot of times you have a not so great idea, but a great management team can take that idea, spin it off, create new opportunities, and really make it successful. So, I put a strong emphasis to this element, the management team, because it is very, very important. So I just want to go very quickly mention, patents. A lot of times we don't think about patents too much until, UF Innovate Tech Licensing steps in. What we learned at Rapid, that if your idea is good and you build a strong customer base and revenue, competitors will come after you. They will try to, somehow have that technology or take your customers. So it can be a very competitive environment depending on the type of technology you're working with. And we learned that having that kind of support, especially early on, making sure that all the IP protection is in place is really critical. And again, this is one of the areas that I think UF Innovate really excels. Well, UF Innovate excels in all areas, but this is really something that I've had people like Mark McClellan. He used to be our Dean of Research at IFAS. I interviewed him a few months ago, and he said, well, at UF, technology licensing is basically the Cadillac of the industry. We have really very strong support. So make sure you use that resource in order to protect the kind of technologies you have and you're thinking about commercializing. But we have to realize also that the moment you have your startup and you license that technology in a way, then at that point you're on your own, right? At that point, you can still have the support from resident intellectual property firms in the hub, but you really need to be very careful and in the job of continuing that process of protecting what you have to make sure you have everything in place in case any of that is contested by a potential competitor. A couple of things I want to mention that I think sometimes they might be forgotten or not considered so much is major pivots and technology challenges. So talking about major pivots, for anyone that's interested in commercializing technology, I really strongly recommend the ICAR program. Damien mentioned that this is going to be given to the teams in the seeded program, but there's also the regional and the national program. I took that ICAR in 2017, 2018. And I remember one of the highlights, one of the main lessons that came out in the first day or so was that if we walked out of ICAR thinking that we were going to be commercializing the exact same thing that we thought about when we moved in, when we started the program, then basically we hadn't learned anything, right? So the message here is a lot of times we step in the commercialization focus thinking that what we want to sell is one very specific thing. And what happens very often is that over time, that idea pivots, and it pivots very, very significantly. When we started Rapid Genomics, we had developed a technology called RapidSeq that we thought was going to be the workhorse of this whole enterprise. Within very few months, we realized that this was a major mistake, that there was no way we could scale up the technology the way we thought we could scale up. And that led us to pivot very drastically to a different type of technology that still worked out, right? So I think it was really a very, very important lesson for us very early on. Another lesson is that, we went from genotyping to actually using the same kind of technology to diagnostics. Right? So this is something that we also had not envisioned as a potential path for a commercial product. And it became actually a very, very successful product service that Rapid provided. So again, keep in mind that it is very much possible that you might change your area, you might change your focus very quickly. And finally, I mentioned ICAR. Again, we did ICAR in 2017, focused on an entirely different idea. We thought we were going to do metabolomics with consumer preference in order to predict the best tasting fruits, vegetables, coffee, and so on, and very quickly realized that there was no market for this. Again, we totally scraped this idea, but then we pivoted to a different idea when we talked to winemakers and who told us, well, if you can predict what is the best wine blend that will mimic the blend that we had last year, this would be a tremendous help for us. Now, we didn't pursue this idea. There are many reasons for that. But again, it's the intent here is to emphasize the fact that a lot of times you may end up doing something that's very different from what you thought you were going to do at the beginning. So I think this is an important point. When I talk to faculty that are thinking about starting a company, a lot of times the questions that I get is, what do I need? What kind of forms do I need to be able to start this? Who do I work with at UF? Will UF allow me to do this or not? And I think one question that is forgotten and is really the first question you should ask is, does anybody actually really care about buying or using what I'm trying to commercialize? Am I trying to address a pinpoint that addresses a key major headache so that people are willing to change what they do the way they do in order to adopt the technology that I'm proposing? Are there enough people that want to suffer, that suffer from that problem, from that pain point? And are they willing to pay money to address that pain point? Okay, and I think this cartoon here at the end really shows as well 3 males sitting in a room thinking that teenage girls would really love their product, okay, but without actually asking if the teenage girls would like to use it. So think about that when you're thinking about commercializing a new idea, because I think this is a place where a lot of times these new enterprises fail, okay? And again, but always remember also that sometimes you can create a need, right? I think the first example here of the iPhone is the obvious one, but also in IFAS, back in the 1970s when the first cultivars for blueberry were created, people really didn't think that they want to eat blueberries. And over time, it really became a major market, a major product that we didn't know that we needed, right? We didn't know that we wanted. So I think that's important. So, okay, let's say you've done all that homework, you have customers, this is great. Now, again, I want everybody that is thinking about this to realize that all of these challenges that I talked about, they now become your problems, right? But at the same time, it is a tremendous opportunity for you to create a new enterprise. It is in a way like starting a new faculty career. Okay, it is very much a new job in a certain way. But the interesting thing about it and the great thing about it is that success is not defined by some incomprehensible grant panel decision that is telling you that your NSF grant will not get funded for any reason, or maybe some reviewers that don't understand your work and may not accept your manuscript. Your success will really be defined by what people want, right? And there's nothing really more satisfying than finding out that your company is really addressing a problem that there's a public out there that want to see addressed, okay? So I think this is what I had for today. I think Damon gave me about 15 to 20 minutes, so I think I'm right on time, which means there's a little bit of time for questions.
Yeah, thanks, Matthias. That was great. Matthias has been a real champion of faculty that are looking to get into this entrepreneurship space. And he was at our Emerging Enterprises Summit in August of last year, down near Tampa, and he's been very heavily engaged in. We had a tour around the state to visit the different seeded teams that have been funded, and so he's a great resource. As you can tell, he's gone through all the trials and tribulations that you have to go through to start a business, and had a successful exit. So a really wonderful resource. And so Matthias, just a couple of questions. So it's clearly very difficult to do this. And yes, UF has the Cadillac of services to support faculty getting into the space. But at the end of the day, what's the value proposition for faculty that have an interesting discovery? Why would faculty do this?
So there is tremendous satisfaction in you be able to take your research, the discoveries you make in the lab, and make them applicable in the real world, right? I mean, this is truly very valuable. And I think if you don't see that as one of the values of what you're proposing, I think it's very, I would not have started a company if we had not seen that we were providing something that would be very valuable to other individuals. So I think that needs to be one of the missions of your new enterprise. I think it helps a lot if that is one of the things you're trying to do.
So one last question, Matthias. So you spend a bit of time talking about the challenges around finding good management. So how do you start to look for that? So when you interview postdocs, and others to work in your labs, you're probably, most of us anyway, are not thinking, would this be a good person to run my new business, right? So how does a faculty member go about identifying that capacity, either immediately around themselves or maybe a little more distant to the lab? How does that work?
Yeah, so I think there are certain personality traits that are very characteristics from successful individuals, right? Being very organized, but also being very proactive and open to communicate with others, seek help, seek funding. I think that's been very helpful. Also, it does help tremendously if you have someone on board that knows well the technology and can really understand the limitations that technology has. So in that sense, if you have a grad student or a postdoc that is part of the invention, that has been part of the discovery, I think that can be tremendously useful also, because they will also understand the limitations that it has, understand how it can pivot. So it's not something that you'll find in every grad student or every postdoc. It takes a certain type of trait But I think we were very, very lucky to have that in the two students that were co-founders of Rapid.
Great. Thanks, Matthias. Really appreciate your presentation. It was outstanding. So we have to move on, but I would just encourage anybody to, if you have questions that you want to pose to any of our speakers, you can do so through the chat. You can also just post your question generally to everybody in the chat, and we'll make sure that at some point, either as part of this webinar or afterwards, through email, what have you, we'll make sure that your question gets answered. Okay. So next, we're going to turn to Dr. Yanis Ambatsidas, who's going to tell us a little bit about his experience with starting a business. Yanis?
Thank you, Damien. I will continue from Matthias' discussion and presentation. I mean, I totally agree with everything he presented. I will focus more on the SBIR today. I will not talk a lot about the company, and a lot of you already know me and know the company, and I share with you that we had several challenges. What I want to say is like maybe now UF has different rules, but when you form a company and you try to license the technology from the University of Florida, at least this happened in my case, you cannot be the CEO of the company. You can lead the company, be part of the company, of course, you can be founder, but you cannot be the person to negotiate with the university in order to license the technology. And that totally makes sense. There's a conflict there. So in this slide, you see a little bit of the history of this company, Agricultural Intelligence, this UF spin-off company. We have licensed two technologies from the University of Florida, AgroView and AgroSense. So we start with AgroView, and I will talk a little bit about that later. Very briefly, we started developing AgroView in 2018. We have a patent application. It's almost all the claims are almost accepted. We formed the company later in 2020. But even before that, we try to find ways to commercialize or license the technology to a different company, or even use US services as another tool to provide this service to our stakeholders. But it was very challenging. So the technology office helped us a lot, and the most critical part was to identify the management team, right? To identify a CEO. And I feel that if you want to find someone to run the company, you need someone that understands about business. You understand about the technology. You need to have people that, of course, in the company that can even further develop the technology, but the management team is super critical, and someone that understands about how to run a business is a key person. So we met with Matt Donovan, I think in the beginning of 2020, if I remember correctly, and he's joining this this seminar. So if you have any questions about him, also for him, maybe he will be available to answer. And then in November 20, as you can see some key points here, we licensed the technology for AgroView from the University of Florida. Then in June 21, we will license another technology that we have developed, also AgroSense. We applied for SBIR phase 1 in, I think, October 21, November, October 21. And we were very lucky, and we are one of the proposals that are selected for funding. And we started working on that, I think, in July 22, and that finished in February 23, and we have already submitted a proposal for phase 2. At the same time, we had some contracts with a crop insurance company. It was actually a global competition, and there are other competitors, of course, and they pick us, which was very important. Something else that I want to mention, that we had a product that was like developed. It wasn't just a prototype, but it was something that you can really use. That helped us a lot. That's why you see that we had in the first year our first sales. And also we're working with growers, but I just want to mention some key points here. About AgroView, this is a cloud and AI-based platform. Very quickly, we start developing this technology with one of my engineers, Victor Patel, and he's in Brazil now, back in 2018. And how we started and why we started developing this tool was because after Irma, I moved in Florida in September 2017. And then after a few days, Irma was my welcome party. So because of that, USDA changed some of the policies, the insurance policies. So if you want to insure a field, you need to know the value of the field, and especially for tree crops, and especially in Florida, because we have in citrus, we have HLB, we have a huge variability in the fields. So we don't know how many growers don't know how many trees they have. So they had to go and manually count all the trees, and that was very time consuming, very expensive operation. So it could take years for them to go and count every tree. And they did it with like people, with clickers, and they had to understand how many gaps they have, places that they had no trees, how many dead trees, young trees, medium-sized trees. So we developed this software to address this issue, first of all, and we found out that we can do much more. So how it works, I'm going to skip this slide, but in general, we're collecting aerial images and also some ground data with some sensors that we have developed. And we use a lot of machine learning algorithms, several machine learning algorithms to, as you can see here, count trees, count gaps. We have also an index, a health index per tree. And we also determine nutrient concentration, and we develop fertility maps. So this is the platform. It's protected. We have received several awards and prizes that help us a lot. Also, NVIDIA has this accelerator award program that it's very good if you work within the NVIDIA platforms. They can help you a lot. The technical support is really good. So when you log in, you see something like that. So when you click a field, this is a citrus block around 2,000 acres. When you click any of these fields, you see here at the left window some initial analytics, how many trees you have, how many gaps, you see that as a pie, and then also the nutrient analysis for this field. And this is just from data from aerial platforms like drones or planes with multispectral cameras. For the nutrient analysis, you need a multispectral camera. For all the other data, you just need a color camera, RGB. When you click, you are inside the block, you go inside the block, or you can double click a block, you see something like that. So here, every dot represents a tree. The blue dots represent the gaps. You see how many gaps we have, right? So it's very important to understand that this variability, what's happening in your field. And then also we categorize them. This is a little bit older version of the system, but you can select height, area, health. Now we have leaf density. We have some other parameters. You see here, we have almost 50-50. It's like the distribution between trees and gaps. So a lot of growers that just use this platform to identify how many gaps they have, where, and how many trees to reorder. And this is a short video. It shows how this system works. As you can see, you can hover above every field. You see the initial data here. When you click view block, again, this is a little bit older version of the system. Again, every dot here represents trees. You can select and unselect it. You can zoom in, zoom out. The histogram also categorizes that trees now here based on the height it's selected. So we have different height categories. You can change the bins, the categories from 2 to 7 or 8 now, I think. Again, blue, you see how many gaps we have. So this is very critical for, of course, for crop insurance companies, because they need to know what is the value of the field, right? You cannot insure something if you don't know really the value, but also for growers, we can predict yield. And as I mentioned, also we developed this fertility map, and we create different zones. You see different colors. There are different zones from deficient to excess, and you see then the range values down here. Potassium is selected in this case, so we have very good accuracy for NPK. And the micronutrients, some of them, they have higher error, but we are working to improve that. So as you can see, even here in this 3 ratio, if this number is 100%, that means that the entire area is covered with trees. If it's less, that means that we have more gaps. And we see that in deficient and low zones, we have more gaps. But what we want to do with this fertility map is to convert it to an application map and use it in order to vary the application rate. So we need to develop a variable rate fertilizer or sprayer for foliar fertilizers and spray as needed. Maybe we spray more here and less in the optimal and high zones. That was the goal of this SBIR. And as I said also, to summarize the AgroView product, this is a new version of this system. Again, you see the age values, the canopy size values, the tree health values, and the fertility map here. If you click any of these points, any of the trees, you see exactly all these values for every tree. What is the height, canopy area, volume, and health. And of course, we detect the gaps too. So AgroSense is the other technology we license. This is a combination of 2 different sensors, LiDAR and cameras. And the idea here was to develop this system to convert a sprayer or a fertilizer to a variable rate technology. So the goal is to detect if there's a tree or not, detect the size of the tree, and spray based on the size and the leaf density. And also with the cameras, we run AI models in real time, so we can detect if the object that we detect is a tree or something else. If it's a human there, will not spray. And at the same time, we can categorize the trees to dead. Of course, we can detect if it's young or mature, and also at risk, and I will give you some examples. And also we can count fruit. So the sensor, we call it AgroSense, but it can be attached to a sprayer or fertilizer, but it can be attached to any farm vehicle also. And I will skip this slide. This is a video. Let me pause it for a minute to explain how that works. So the sensing system is somewhere here. So at the left video, we see the right camera. And as you can see, as it works, also it counts fruit. Of course, not all the fruit, but we don't need that. We know the location. Here you see the fruit detected, the average fruit diameter, the tree condition. Again, it's dead, gap, dead, at risk, and healthy, and the tree height. And based on the tree height, we control the nozzles. And this is, again, a video demo. Very quickly, you see that here we have a gap. So in this case, you see that the right side will stop spraying. I mean, you cannot see the changes based on the height. Now, this tree is at risk because there are less leaves. So here, we can even vary the rate if we need. So the idea with this SBIR program, and also one more thing, all this data, we can upload it to AgroView again, and we have spray heat map and fruit heat map. So when you click any of these points, where the GPS points, you see time, date, speed, flow, accumulated flow, and fruit. And this is where it started. This is when it ended. So the idea of the SBIR is to combine these two, combine AgroView, develop a prescription map from fertility map, and integrate that with the sprayer or the fertilizer in order to change the rate based on the zone, but also based on the tree height and leaf density. This is the idea of the SBIR program. As I said, we're very lucky that our proposal was selected. This is the 2 main objectives. This is the smart nutrient, which is actually the integration of these 2 systems in order to develop a software that understands both the zone-based maps and also the real-time sensing of AgroSense, and also apply that in the fertilizer and smart fertilizer, smart sprayer. And I just here put a little bit the timeline. It's the phase 1, it's only for 8 months. And there are some activities that the company will lead and some that the University of Florida will lead. And I will stop here. if you want, Damien, I can talk more about the challenges we had with the company. But I just want to focus more on the SBIR.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Amazidis. That was great. Actually, the first question that came in was about the major challenges. So, Dr. Kirst outlined several major challenges along his, 2011 to 2022 path that, that his company walked. What are the biggest bottlenecks or challenges that you are currently facing?
A lot. I mean, I can talk forever, but it's really a lot. First of all, let me say that the technology office helped us a lot, and especially John Byard. He really helped me, even with connect me with Matt Donovan, the current CEO, which is very important. As I said, you really need someone to manage the company, and this is my second spin-off company. So I made the mistake with the first one to try to run it, and of course, when you have two jobs, that's very difficult. The main challenge again is like how you can keep your company to survive in the first few years, right? Without funding, this is very difficult. So that's why you need the help from an expert. And also, we also had to change and upgrade our software and to scale it up. We had a lot of issues. I didn't talk about that. But how to keep a team without funding, I think this is the main challenge. That's why SBIR helped us, but it took like a year to develop the proposal, not to develop the proposal, but to decide to apply. We are lucky that we have some awards and prizes and some sales, so that helped us a lot. But without that, it will be super difficult. And we formed the company during the COVID era, so that was another big challenge there.
Yeah, I can imagine. So one other question, I saw one that just came through the chat as well, but can you speak to your experience applying for SBIR? How different was that from applying for a standard research grant?
The SBIR proposal, it was, I don't know if I can say that, it was easy. I think we have the experience. We know how to write grants, so it wasn't very challenging. It has to be very applicable. You need to understand this is a project for 8 months. You have to have really clear goals. You have to promise something that you can really develop in 8 months. Don't overpromise. I was also a reviewer in this proposal phase 1, phase 2, and that was a big problem. I mean, if you go there with 10 objectives or like big objectives or something, I mean, people will understand that this is impossible. And then you need to really explain the novelty. And what we emphasize there with that this system is the only one. We are not, at least I don't know any other system like that can combine zone-based management with real-time sensing. So we emphasize a lot in the innovation, and we had a very clear plan. So, or we are very lucky, I don't know, but it wasn't difficult we put the proposal very quickly, but we also had a system developed, right? We have 2 systems really developed with papers to support the novelty. So that wasn't that tricky. Now I hope we get to phase 2, but let's see, fingers crossed.
Well, all that's very positive. I'm sure it sounds like music to the ears of the SBIR staff who are with us today. A very easy process, and, a lot of clarity around how to do that. That's great.
One comment.
Sorry, go ahead.
One last comment. I think I mentioned that
Yes,
to
please.
you before. I said you have helped us a lot, but something else that Anita, you can do is like we also have an office at the technology office, the incubator. And we asked the first year if we can at least have the few months or the first year for free from this office. And the answer was no. So we talk about this support. We haven't seen any funding coming from that program. We ask a lot and we try to identify how we can apply for that. Maybe it's our fault that we didn't spend more time. But in general, the support from UF and the technology office was great. And without John Byard, I can really say that we weren't going to form the company even.
All right, great. Well, I'm sure there are always things that can be tweaked and improved, but it's great to have that frank feedback. Thanks so much, Giannis. Thank you to all of our speakers for the first portion. So we heard from Anita Rao, who talked to us about the UF ecosystem for supporting faculty engaged in entrepreneurship. We heard from 2 success stories, all the war stories down in the trenches, building a company from the ground up, from Dr. Matthias Kurz and Dr. Giannis Ambazitis. I want to thank all 3 of them. The next portion of the webinar focuses on the SBIR program. And we've got 3 staff members from the USDA that are going to talk to us about that program. And if you don't mind, I'm going to actually hand things over to Dr. Shija George, who's going to serve as moderator for this next portion. So.
Yeah.